Have you ever sat down to pray or meditate, desperately seeking peace and divine connection, only to find yourself more agitated and restless than when you began? What if I told you that the very approach you've been taught about spiritual stillness might be the exact thing preventing you from experiencing the profound transformation you're seeking? For centuries, millions of sincere spiritual seekers have misunderstood one of the most powerful statements Jesus ever made. Be still and know that I am God. These words have echoed through time, whispered in churches, repeated in meditation halls, and quoted in countless spiritual books. Yet despite their popularity, the true essence of this teaching has remained hidden in plain sight, veiled by layers of misinterpretation and religious tradition. Has this ever happened to you? You create the perfect environment for meditation. Candles lit, soft music playing, phone turned off, and you sit down with every intention of experiencing that divine stillness everyone talks about. You close your eyes, trying to silence your thoughts, attempting to force your mind into some imagined state of emptiness. But instead of peace, you encounter a torrent of mental noise. Your grocery list appears. That conversation from last week replays. Worries about tomorrow surface, and before you know it, you've spent 20 minutes wrestling with your own mind, feeling like a spiritual failure. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's what most people don't realize. The noise that prevents you from experiencing divine communion isn't coming from your environment. It's not the traffic outside your window or the neighbor's dog barking. The real barrier exists within your own consciousness, that relentless stream of worries about tomorrow, regrets about yesterday, and an endless parade of desires and fears that create a mental static, drowning out what Smith Wigglesworth called the still small voice of truth within. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely revolutionize your understanding of spiritual practice. Smith Wigglesworth, one of the most profound spiritual teachers of his time, discovered something extraordinary about this teaching that changes everything. He realized that true stillness isn't about achieving some artificial state of mental emptiness. It's not about fighting your thoughts or creating a void in your mind through sheer willpower. What you've been taught about stillness might actually be working against you. The harder you try to force your mind into silence, the louder it becomes. The more you struggle to create peace, the more elusive it seems. And here's the revelation that transformed countless lives. Stillness isn't something you achieve through effort. It's something you allow through recognition. This subtle but profound shift in understanding opens the door to a dimension of spiritual experience that most people never encounter, despite years of sincere seeking. The question isn't whether you can empty your mind or eliminate all thoughts. The real question is whether you've been looking for God in all the wrong places. Because here's the hidden truth. That changes everything. The kingdom of God isn't some distant celestial realm you'll access someday if you pray hard enough or meditate long enough. Jesus revealed something revolutionary when he said, "The kingdom is within you, not will be within you, not might be if you're worthy, but is within you right now, at this very moment." Think about the implications of this for a second. Everything you've been seeking externally, peace, wisdom, purpose, provision, already exists as a present reality within your own consciousness. The transformation in your life doesn't begin when you finally achieve some advanced spiritual state. It begins the instant you recognize what's already present. This shift in mindset is subtle but carries enormous impact, because most people spend their entire lives searching for something they've never actually lost. The journey Smith Wigglesworth invites us on isn't about acquiring something new or becoming someone different. It's about removing the barriers that prevent you from recognizing what you already are. Your consciousness isn't an empty container that needs to be filled with spiritual experiences. It's a vast kingdom containing infinite resources, wisdom, and possibility that have always been there, waiting beneath the surface noise of your thinking mind. This is where most spiritual teachings miss the mark entirely. They treat stillness as a technique to master, a skill to develop, a state to achieve through discipline and effort. But when Jesus spoke of stillness. He was revealing a universal principle that transcends any particular religious dogma or meditation method. He was describing a fundamental truth about consciousness itself, that divine reality communicates not through the noise and drama of your racing thoughts, but through the quiet certainty that naturally emerges when your personal thinking subsides. If this resonates with you, subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring these transformative principles together. There's so much more to discover about the power of divine stillness. The greatest barrier to your spiritual growth isn't that you lack faith or devotion or spiritual knowledge. It's not that you haven't prayed enough or meditated consistently enough. Behind the scenes of all your spiritual struggle lies a simple but profound problem. You can't recognize what you already possess because you're too busy searching for it. You're trying to create stillness when stillness is actually your natural state, obscured only by layers of mental activity you've mistaken for yourself. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what actually happens when you shift from seeking stillness to allowing it. Most people approach spiritual practice from a consciousness of lack. I don't have peace, I need healing, I'm missing something essential. But this starting point actually reinforces the very separation you're trying to overcome. Every time you seek for God as if God were absent, you strengthen the illusion of distance between you and divine presence. The revelation Wigglesworth discovered transforms this entire dynamic because it begins from a completely different premise. If this perspective is starting to shift something in your understanding, write in the comments. Stillness already exists within me. What actually prevents this recognition from happening? Here's where we encounter something fascinating about human consciousness. Pay attention to where your mind naturally gravitates throughout the day. If you're like most people, your attention constantly fixates on problems, analyzing what's wrong, obsessing over what's missing, replaying what hurts. This isn't a personal failing or character flaw. It's a collective mindset pattern so pervasive that you probably don't even notice it happening anymore. But here's the hidden truth about this problem-focused thinking. It locks your consciousness in the exact same frequency that created the problem in the first place. Think about it. When you're consumed with worry about your financial situation, analyzing it from every angle, your awareness remains trapped in lack consciousness. When you're constantly focusing on symptoms of illness, examining how you feel, checking for improvement, you're reinforcing illness consciousness. The very act of giving your full attention to the problem strengthens its hold on your experience. Smith Wigglesworth discovered something revolutionary about how consciousness actually works. Spiritual stillness doesn't just calm your emotions or reduce stress. It literally elevates your awareness beyond material perception into a dimension where solutions already exist. This isn't about positive thinking or trying to imagine things differently. It's accessing a level of mind where wholeness has always been established, waiting for recognition. The transformation happens when you stop trying to solve problems at the level where they appear, and instead, rise into the consciousness where they dissolve naturally. The journey from material perception to spiritual awareness sounds like it should take years of disciplined practice, doesn't it? Decades of meditation, rigorous spiritual training, perhaps a monastery retreat or two. But behind the scenes of every genuine spiritual breakthrough lies a simpler mechanism, a shift in where you place your attention. That's it. Not years of effort, but a decision about focus that can happen in a single moment and change everything that follows. What Wigglesworth witnessed over and over again defied conventional logic. Problems that had resisted every human solution, chronic health conditions, financial crises that seemed impossible to overcome, relationship conflicts that had lasted for years. These things dissolved when approached from spiritual stillness, not because someone tried harder or found the right technique, but because their perception transformed. And here's what makes this so powerful. The practice works not by changing your external circumstances first, but by shifting your internal awareness. When perception changes, your experience naturally follows because you're literally seeing from a different dimension of consciousness. The impact of this principle extends far beyond solving isolated problems. It reveals a fundamental truth about how reality operates. Your circumstances aren't creating your experience. Your consciousness is. The outer world you encounter each day is, essentially a reflection of the inner awareness you're operating from. Change the awareness and the reflection must change. This isn't metaphysical theory. It's a practical principle that works with the precision of any natural law. Now I want to go even deeper into examining exactly what this shift in perception looks like in real-world situations, because understanding the principle intellectually is one thing, but seeing how it actually manifests in someone's life reveals the true power of what we're discussing. If you're beginning to recognize how your focus on problems might be keeping you locked in problem consciousness, write in the comments, "Ready to shift my perception." Let me share something that might completely change how you approach your spiritual practice. Most people struggle with meditation because they're operating under a fundamental misconception about what stillness actually is. They sit down, close their eyes, and immediately begin battling their own thoughts. Every time a thought appears, they see it as failure. They're trying to create some kind of mental void, an empty state where no thoughts exist. And of course, the harder they try to achieve this emptiness, the more thoughts flood in. It's exhausting, frustrating, and ultimately counterproductive. The breakthrough that transforms everything comes when you shift your understanding from emptiness to receptivity. These two concepts might sound similar, but the difference between them is enormous. Emptiness suggests a blank slate, a vacuum, something you must create through force of will. Receptivity, on the other hand, is about becoming open, available, tuned in. Think of your consciousness not as something that needs to be emptied, but as a receiver that needs to be properly adjusted. This reframe alone removes so much unnecessary struggle from spiritual practice. You're no longer fighting against your natural mental activity. Instead, you're cultivating a quality of openness where divine intelligence can flow through you effortlessly. You become a clear channel rather than someone frantically trying to create artificial mental blankness. The wisdom you seek is already being spoken by divine mind. You're simply learning to receive it. Smith Wigglesworth captured this perfectly with an analogy that clarifies the entire journey. He compared spiritual practice to tuning a radio. When you turn on a radio, the music isn't being created by your device. The broadcast already exists, transmitted on various frequencies through the air around you right now. Your radio doesn't generate the signal. It simply receives what's already there once you adjust the dial to the correct frequency. The impact of understanding this principle cannot be overstated. Suddenly, meditation and prayer transform from exhausting effort into natural reception. You're not trying to manufacture a spiritual experience through sheer determination. You're not attempting to create divine presence through the right combination of techniques. You're simply adjusting your inner awareness to receive what's already broadcasting on the frequency of spirit. Behind the scenes of every genuine spiritual connection lies this simple mechanism. The music has always been playing. God has always been present. Divine wisdom has always been available. The only question is whether your consciousness is tuned to receive it. When you grasp this, the entire energy around your practice shifts. There's no more strain, no more sense that you have to make something happen. Instead, there's a gentle adjustment of attention, a relaxing into receptivity, a recognition that you're surrounded by divine broadcast and simply need to tune in. This hidden truth explains why some people seem to effortlessly connect with spiritual reality, while others struggle for years without breakthrough. It's not about worthiness or special abilities. It's about whether they understand they're receivers rather than creators. The transformation happens when you stop trying so hard and start allowing more deeply, when you release the exhausting effort to force stillness and instead cultivate the open receptivity that naturally receives it. Now, I want to go even deeper into what actually blocks this receptivity, because understanding the obstacle is just as important as understanding the solution. And what Wigglesworth discovered about this will probably surprise you. If you're recognizing that you've been trying to create rather than receive, write in the comments, "I'm ready to tune in." What Wigglesworth identified as the fundamental obstacle might be operating in your life right now without you even realizing it. He called it the separated self-illusion, and it's so deeply embedded in human consciousness that most people never question it. This illusion is the deeply ingrained belief that you exist as a separate entity, fundamentally disconnected from divine presence. You see yourself as over here, and God as over there. You're the seeker, and the divine is what you're seeking. You're incomplete, and God is the completeness you need. Here's where this becomes absolutely critical to understand. This consciousness of separation cannot truly receive because it's founded on a lie. Think about how most people approach prayer and meditation. They're essentially trying to build a bridge across a gap that doesn't actually exist. They're separate beings attempting to connect with something outside themselves, reaching across an imaginary distance, hoping to somehow close the space between human and divine. But every moment spent operating from this premise actually reinforces the very separation you're trying to overcome. If something in this message spoke to your heart, a simple like helps this content reach others who are searching for the same breakthrough you're experiencing right now. Let me know this message connected with you by hitting the like button. The revolutionary shift happens when stillness transforms from an attempt to connect with something distant into a recognition of your inherent oneness with infinite source. You're not separate from divine presence trying to reach it. You're an expression of it. The journey isn't about bridging a gap. It's about recognizing there never was one. This isn't just philosophical semantics. This shift in understanding changes everything about how you experience spiritual practice and how receptive you actually become. Now consider what this means for the second part of Jesus' statement. Know that I am God. Wigglesworth discovered what he called the principle of divine all-readiness, and this revelation transforms the entire spiritual journey. God's nature and presence already exists in complete fullness right now, whether or not your human consciousness recognizes it. The sun doesn't begin shining when you open your curtains. It was always there. You simply allowed yourself to see what never ceased being present. Your stillness doesn't create divine presence. It allows you to perceive what has never been absent. This fundamentally changes what prayer becomes. Instead of a desperate struggle to change reality, to make something happen, to convince God to intervene in your circumstances, prayer transforms into peaceful alignment with what eternally is. There's no more frantic energy, no more anxiety about whether you're doing it right or praying hard enough. The strain that typically accompanies spiritual practice dissolves because you're no longer trying to manufacture something that isn't there. The impact of this principle extends into every area of your spiritual life. When you approach stillness, knowing that wholeness already exists, healing already is, provision already is established in divine reality. You're not begging for something to be created. You're allowing your awareness to recognize what eternally exists. Behind the scenes of every answered prayer lies this simple mechanism. Not that God finally decided to grant your request, but that your consciousness finally aligned with what was always true. This hidden truth explains why some prayers seem answered while others don't. It's not about God's willingness or your worthiness. It's about whether your consciousness can receive what's already being given. The transformation happens when you stop trying to change divine reality, and instead allow divine reality to transform your perception. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this principle actually works in real situations, because seeing the practical application makes all the difference between understanding a concept and experiencing a transformation. If this principle of divine all-readiness is resonating with something you've always sensed but couldn't quite articulate, write in the comments, "It was always there." Let me tell you about someone whose journey perfectly illustrates how this principle works in real life. Helen had spent years, literally years, seeking financial breakthrough. She tried every manifestation technique you can imagine. Affirmations repeated hundreds of times daily. Vision boards covering her walls. Visualization exercises where she'd picture herself wealthy in vivid detail. She attended every prosperity workshop, read every abundance book, and believed with all her heart that she was doing everything right. Yet her bank account told a different story. Month after month, the same struggle, the same lack, the same frustration. When Helen discovered Wigglesworth's teaching on stillness, something clicked that changed everything. She suddenly recognized that all her frantic spiritual activity was actually working against her. Every affirmation was subtly emphasizing what she didn't have. Every visualization was reinforcing her consciousness of lack because it started from the premise that abundance was something she needed to create rather than recognize. The very effort she was putting into manifesting prosperity was broadcasting loud and clear, "I don't have enough." The decision she made next seemed counterintuitive, almost reckless. She stopped everything, all the techniques, all the affirmations, all the desperate spiritual striving. Instead, she began something radically different. 20 minutes each day she simply sat in quiet recognition of divine completeness, not asking for anything, not trying to manifest anything, just resting in the awareness that infinite abundance is the very nature of reality itself, whether or not her bank account reflected it yet. Behind the scenes of her external life, a profound shift was occurring in her consciousness. She stopped obsessively checking her balance. She stopped worrying constantly about bills. Her attention moved from what was missing to what eternally is. Within 3 months, the transformation manifested in ways she never could have orchestrated through human effort. An unexpected job offer appeared with double her previous salary. Investments she'd forgotten about suddenly matured with surprising returns. Opportunities that had always been there but invisible to her anxious awareness suddenly became obvious. The revelation here is critical. The transformation didn't come through frantically trying to make abundance happen. It came through the receptive awareness that emerges from true stillness. Helen's story reveals the hidden mechanism behind every genuine manifestation. It's not about forcing reality to bend to your will. It's about aligning your consciousness with what already exists in divine reality. Consider Marcus, whose journey took this principle into the realm of physical healing. 7 years he had suffered with chronic pain that medical professionals couldn't resolve. He tried everything. Medications that dulled the pain temporarily, but never addressed the root cause. Alternative therapies, healing modalities, desperate prayers begging God to take away his suffering. Each temporary. Relief was followed by the pain's return, and with each return his hope diminished a little more. When Marcus encountered Wigglesworth's teachings, he recognized he'd been approaching his healing from the consciousness of brokenness. He was fighting his condition, seeing his body as fundamentally damaged, constantly begging God to fix what was wrong. Every prayer reinforced the belief that something needed to be changed, which ironically locked his awareness in the very consciousness that sustained the problem. The shift Marcus made was profound. Instead of fighting against his pain, he spent 30 minutes each day in quiet recognition of spiritual wholeness, not denying the physical sensations, but refusing to give them power through constant attention and fear. Over 6 months, something remarkable unfolded. The pain episodes decreased gradually in both frequency and intensity, but the real transformation was deeper than physical relief. Marcus discovered an inner peace that remained stable regardless of what his body felt. He had accessed a dimension of consciousness that transcended the physical condition entirely. Now, I want to go even deeper into the practical methods that make this shift possible, because understanding the principle is one thing, but knowing exactly how to apply it in your daily life is where real transformation begins. If Helen's or Marcus's journey resonates with something you're currently facing, write in the comments. Consciousness changes everything. So how do you actually practice this kind of stillness in a way that creates real transformation? Wigglesworth developed a powerful technique he called resting in the Word, and it's completely different from what most people do when they meditate or pray. Instead of mentally wrestling with your problem, analyzing it from every angle, or mechanically repeating affirmations about what you want to change, you select a spiritual truth that addresses the consciousness behind your situation and simply abide in that truth. Here's what this looks like in practice. If you're facing a health challenge, you don't focus on the condition itself, the symptoms, the diagnosis, the fear surrounding it. Instead, you might rest in the truth that wholeness is the eternal nature of divine being, which is your true identity. You're not using this truth as a tool to fix something. You're allowing your consciousness to marinate in this reality until it becomes more substantial to you than the physical problem. This isn't mechanical repetition where you say something over and over hoping it will work. It's conscious dwelling in spiritual reality, letting that reality saturate your awareness. The impact of this approach is profound because it prevents meditation from becoming another form of mental striving. Think about how most spiritual practices operate. You're analyzing, affirming, visualizing, and constantly checking for results. Is it working yet? Do I feel different? Has anything changed? All of this creates more mental activity rather than less. Resting in the Word bypasses this trap entirely by emphasizing receptivity over activity. You're not trying to make something happen through spiritual effort. You're allowing truth to reveal itself through your receptive awareness. The mindset shift here is subtle but carries enormous weight. Rather than approaching your practice as something you do to get results, I'm meditating to heal my body. I'm praying to fix my finances. You recognize it as a state of consciousness you allow yourself to enter. This removes all the strain and anxiety that typically accompanies meditation and replaces it with a deep sense of rest in truth. You're no longer exhausting yourself trying to force a spiritual breakthrough. You're simply resting in what already is. But here's where Wigglesworth discovered something even more revolutionary. Most spiritual practice, even when done correctly, remains limited by intense personal focus. My healing, my financial situation, my relationship problems, my career, my. This personal focus actually constrains what can be received because it keeps consciousness small and self-centered. Behind the scenes of this limitation lies a hidden truth about how consciousness operates. Impersonal stillness expands your awareness beyond personal concerns entirely. In this practice, you don't pray for your healing. You acknowledge that wholeness is the nature of all being everywhere. You don't ask for your supply. You recognize that infinite abundance is the very fabric of universal reality itself. At first, this approach seems almost counterintuitive. How can focusing on universal principles rather than my specific needs possibly help me? The revelation is that when you rise into universal consciousness, your personal experience automatically begins to reflect the universal truth you've contacted. Think of it like this. When you're fixated on your personal problem, you're operating from a limited, contracted awareness. But when you expand into recognition of universal principles, you access the infinite resources of impersonal divine mind. Your individual situation is simply one expression of these universal principles. By contacting truth at the universal level, you're tapping into something far more powerful than personal willpower or individual effort could ever reach. Now, I want to go even deeper into what actually blocks this expanded awareness, because there's a hidden obstacle that keeps most people trapped in personal consciousness, even when they're sincerely trying to transcend it. If you're beginning to sense how personal focus might be limiting what you can receive, write in the comments, expanding into universal truth. One of the most significant obstacles that prevents people from experiencing this expanded awareness is something they're usually completely unaware of: their attachment to mental pictures. Watch what happens in your own mind when you approach spiritual practice seeking a solution. Almost immediately, without conscious effort, your mind creates detailed images of exactly how the answer should look, when it should arrive, what form it should take, and through which channel it must come. If you're praying for financial provision, your mind instantly pictures a specific job, a particular raise, a certain business opportunity. If you're seeking healing, you envision a specific treatment method, a particular doctor, a certain timeline for recovery. These mental pictures form so automatically that you probably don't even realize you're creating them. But here's the hidden truth. These images actually become barriers that prevent you from receiving what divine intelligence is already providing. When you insist that your healing must come through a particular treatment, that your financial supply must appear through a specific channel, or that your relationship must unfold according to a predetermined script, you're essentially closing yourself off to countless other possibilities. Divine Mind has infinite ways to provide what you need, but your limited human thinking, based on past experience and current knowledge, can only conceive of a few possibilities. You're trying to squeeze infinite intelligence through the narrow filter of personal imagination. True stillness includes holding your preferences lightly. You can state your need clearly, there's nothing wrong with that, but you remain open to solutions beyond what you could imagine. This doesn't mean abandoning all desires or pretending you don't care how things unfold. It means approaching your situation with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. You articulate what you need, then silently add, this or something better for the highest good. This mindset creates the receptive state where unexpected and often superior solutions can emerge. The journey from attachment to openness naturally evolves into what Wigglesworth called living by grace, and this represents perhaps the most transformative shift in consciousness you can experience. Living by grace means moving from trying to make everything happen through your personal will and effort to recognizing that divine intelligence is already governing every situation perfectly. Behind the scenes of everything you see, there's a spiritual component operating that transcends human capability. This doesn't mean you become passive or irresponsible. You're not sitting around, waiting for miracles to drop from the sky. You still take appropriate action, make necessary decisions, and fulfill your responsibilities. The difference is the consciousness behind the action. You're no longer operating from the belief that everything depends solely on you, that if you don't figure it out and force it to happen, nothing will change. Instead, you recognize your activity as the human expression of divine intelligence that's already at work. When challenges arise, instead of immediately launching into frantic problem-solving mode, you pause first to recognize that divine mind is already present in this situation with solutions beyond your current understanding. This momentary recognition of grace creates an opening for inspiration and guidance that transcends purely human reasoning. The impact of this shift extends into every decision you make, every challenge you face, every opportunity that presents itself. Now, I want to go even deeper into the very real challenges that arise on this journey, because understanding these obstacles beforehand helps you navigate them without losing faith when they appear. If you're sensing a new way of approaching life's situations through this understanding of grace, write in the comments, guided by something greater. If you've made it this far in our journey together, I want you to know that's significant. Most people scroll past, click away, get distracted, but you stayed. Something in this message resonated with you, and that resonance isn't accidental. You're exactly where you need to be, discovering what your consciousness is ready to receive. I hope what we've explored today has shifted something in how you understand stillness, how you approach your spiritual practice, maybe even how you see yourself in relation to divine presence. These aren't just concepts to think about, they're invitations to experience reality from an entirely different dimension of awareness. If this content serves you, I'd love for you to join our growing community here. Subscribe to the channel because we're going deeper into these transformative principles in every video, exploring the hidden truths that change how you experience life. This isn't just spiritual theory, it's practical wisdom that impacts your daily reality. And if you've stayed with me until this very moment, leave a comment saying, "Divine stillness lives in me," so I know we've connected on this level. I read every comment, and it means something to see who's walking this path alongside me. A simple like on this video helps others who need this message find it too. There are people searching for exactly what we've discussed today, and your like creates a bridge that guides them here. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into the forgotten teachings that transform spiritual practice. Click and continue this journey with me there. I'll meet you on the other side, and we'll explore the next layer of this profound truth together. Until then, remember, the stillness you seek has never been absent. It's been waiting within you all along,